After decades of silent exploitation, the Sahel region has finally drawn a line in the sand. Under the bold leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a new chapter is unfolding, one that signals the end of unchecked foreign looting and the beginning of true African sovereignty. The world is witnessing a seismic shift in power as Burkina Faso, along with its Sahel allies, reclaims control over its most valuable natural resources, gold and uranium. This is not just about minerals. It's about dignity, independence, and rewriting the narrative that Africa must remain dependent while its wealth fuels the empires of others. Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old revolutionary and president of Burkina Faso, has made it crystal clear: the era of foreign corporations draining Africa's soil while leaving its people in poverty is over. The Sahel, long treated as a resource hub by global powers, is now rising with a defiant voice. In bold moves, Traoré's administration has suspended exploitative mining contracts, expelled foreign operators who refused fair terms, and launched audits into decades of unregulated extraction. In doing so, he has shocked the international community and gained the respect of millions across the continent. For years, foreign powers, particularly former colonial empires, extracted massive quantities of gold and uranium from the Sahel, with minimal benefit to local populations. Uranium from Niger lit up European cities, while villages near the mines sat in darkness. Gold worth billions left Burkina Faso's soil, while its youth remained jobless. Traoré has turned this model upside down. His new policies enforce national control over resource management, ensure higher royalties for the state, place African-owned companies at the center of future mining operations. This shift has not come without resistance. Western media outlets have framed Traoré as a destabilizer, a populist, or even a dictator. But inside Africa, many view him as a liberator, a man unafraid to challenge a system that has bled the continent dry. Traoré's muscular image, often standing with soldiers or among the people, has become a symbol of African pride. He represents a growing movement across the continent: young, unapologetic leadership that refuses to bow to foreign pressure. In fact, Traoré's approach to resource reclamation is part of a broader regional trend. Mali, Niger, and Guinea have all taken similar steps, forging a united front known as the Alliance of Sahel States. These countries, often portrayed as weak or dependent, are now demanding equal terms in global economic relationships. They are challenging the status quo, not just with speeches, but with laws, contracts, and boots on the ground guarding their minds. The reclamation of gold and uranium also holds strategic implications. As the world moves toward a post-oil era, the demand for rare minerals like uranium used for nuclear energy is soaring. Control over these resources means control over leverage in international negotiations. In Sahel nations, led by voices like Traoré, are learning to use that leverage. They are no longer giving away uranium for pennies while paying billions in foreign debt. They are calling for fair trade, fair value, to new economic reality that benefits Africans first. Yet perhaps the most powerful aspect of this movement is its symbolism. For generations, Africans were told that their wealth would always be managed by others, that progress required outside help. Traoré has shattered that myth. By reclaiming gold and uranium, the Sahel is also reclaiming its future. Schools can now be funded with national wealth. Infrastructure can be built without begging for foreign loans. Youth can find jobs not in the minds of others, but in industries that serve their own people. Ibrahim Traoré's mission goes beyond economic reform. It's a cultural and psychological revolution. It's about breaking free from centuries of manipulation and redefining what African leadership looks like. Where previous leaders often compromised or hesitated, Traoré acts. Where others spoke in coded diplomacy, he speaks with fire. And where others feared retaliation, he welcomes it as the cost of freedom. There is still a long road ahead. Rebuilding. Economies after years of dependence will not be easy. External powers will likely try to sabotage progress using economic pressure or political interference. But one thing is certain: Africa is no longer sleeping. The Sahel, once labeled unstable and impoverished, is now a force demanding respect. And at its front stands a leader who refuses to let another ounce of gold or uranium leave his land without justice. This is more than a policy change. It is a declaration of independence. Ibrahim Traoré has ended the looting and he has lit a fire across the continent, across the heart of West Africa. A political and economic revolution is unfolding, with an intensity the world can no longer ignore. The Sahel nations, led by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, uniting in a historic stand to expel unfair foreign mining contracts and reclaim control over their vast mineral wealth. This uprising against exploitation is more than a regional response to economic injustice. It is a coordinated effort to restore African economic sovereignty and put an end to centuries of resource extraction that benefited outsiders while leaving the people of the Sahel in poverty. The alliance of these nations is sending shockwaves through the global financial order and signaling that the age of colonial-era resource control is rapidly ending. For decades, multinational corporations dominated the mining industries in the Sahel. These companies secured contracts under outdated legal frameworks, often inherited from colonial administrations or negotiated with former regimes willing to trade national assets for political security or personal gain. These agreements gave foreign interests control over gold, uranium, and other precious resources, allowing them to extract massive profits while paying negligible royalties and offering little to no long-term benefits to local populations. The mining sites, though rich in economic potential, often left behind environmental damage, displaced communities, and a broken promise of prosperity. Now, a new generation of African leadership is rising, one that refuses to accept the notion that their nations must be resource-rich yet cash-poor. Spearheaded by Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali, and General Abdourahmane Chiani of Niger. The Sahel is witnessing a powerful alliance built not on foreign dependency, but on mutual strength and shared liberation. These leaders are not only challenging Western economic hegemony, they are actively dismantling it. The coordinated rejection of foreign mining contracts began with audits. Each of these nations launched deep investigations into the terms and outcomes of existing deals. What they uncovered confirmed long-held suspicions. Billions of dollars in minerals had left the region with almost nothing returned in infrastructure, healthcare, or education. In some cases, companies were found to be underreporting outputs or evading taxes through offshore entities. The response from these governments was swift and unapologetic. Contracts were canceled, operations suspended, and some foreign mining executives were ordered to leave the country. This mass contract expulsion marks a turning point in African economic policy. Instead of begging for development aid from the same powers that extracted their wealth, Sahel nations are now asserting their right to manage and profit from their own resources. The Alliance of Sahel States, recently formed by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, is not just a political bloc, it is an economic front determined to negotiate with global markets on equal terms. These countries have committed to drafting new joint frameworks for resource management that prioritize national ownership, local employment, environmental protection, sustainable reinvestment. Restoring economic sovereignty requires more than kicking out foreign companies. It involves building new systems and institutions capable of managing mines, refining raw materials domestically, and trading with partners who respect African autonomy. To that end, the Sahel nations are investing in local capacity building. They are inviting African-owned firms to take part in mining operations, creating state-owned enterprises, and partnering with countries outside traditional Western spheres to diversify their economic relationships. This strategy is not about isolation, it's about independence. It's about choosing partnerships that align with national interest, rather than those forced through colonial legacy or foreign pressure. The implications of this movement are far-reaching. Western governments, whose economies rely heavily on minerals sourced from Africa, have reacted with concern. Media narratives have sought to paint these African leaders as unstable or radical. But on the ground, their popularity is surging. Across the Sahel and beyond, citizens view them as heroes men, willing to stand up to centuries of economic bullying and finally demand a fair share of Africa's wealth. These leaders have become symbols of hope in a region long plagued by poverty, corruption, and foreign manipulation. The unity of these nations also represents a strategic defense against retaliation. By standing together, the Sahel countries reduce their individual vulnerability to sanctions, blockades, or foreign-backed coups. They're learning from history understanding that division has always been used as a tool of control. United, they form a formidable front, capable of negotiating on their own terms and defending their shared interests. This solidarity is not just political theater, it is practical. It's grounded in a common struggle and a common vision. At the heart of this revolution lies a simple but profound truth. Africa's resources belong to Africans. For too long, that truth was buried under treaties, military interventions, and corporate deals struck in European boardrooms. Today, the leaders of the Sahel are unearthing that truth and using it as the foundation for a new future. A future where gold funds schools and hospitals, where uranium powers local industries rather than foreign capitals, and where African wealth builds African nations. The expulsion of unfair mining contracts is only the beginning. What follows is the rebuilding of economies, the restoration of dignity, and the creation of systems that serve the people, not the powerful outsiders who once exploited them. The Sahel Stand is a declaration of ownership, a call for justice, and a message to the world: Africa will no longer be mined for the benefit of others. Its people are ready to rise in, they are rising together across the African continent. A new resistance is rising, one not fought with weapons, but with legislation, policy, and economic sovereignty. The recent actions by Sahel nations, particularly under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, mark not only a regional shift, but a symbol of broader African defiance against what many now call neocolonial resource theft. For generations, Africa's vast mineral wealth has been extracted by foreign powers under the guise of development partnerships and aid programs, leaving behind little but environmental devastation and economic dependency. The current wave of nationalizations and contract cancellations sends a powerful message to the world. African nations are reclaiming control over what is theirs. The term neocolonialism refers to a modern form of exploitation, where former colonial and powers now operating through multinational corporations and international financial institutions continue to exert control over African resources without direct political rule. In this model, African countries may technically be independent, but their economies are still shaped, constrained, and siphoned by powerful external actors. Contracts are written in foreign languages, negotiated in distant capitals, and enforced by global institutions more interested in maintaining profit margins than justice. Through this lens, gold mines in Burkina Faso or uranium fields in Niger are not simply industries. They are battlegrounds where sovereignty is challenged every day. In this context, the move by Sahel nations to expel exploitative mining agreements is not just an economic decision, it is a declaration of independence. For decades, international companies were allowed to extract Africa's natural wealth with minimal compensation to the local population. In many cases, the profits flowed directly into the hands of elites in both Africa and Europe, while the communities closest to these mines lived in poverty, breathing in dust and watching trucks carry their country's riches to foreign ports. These companies often operated under tax holidays, royalty loopholes, or outright secret clauses that allowed them to report losses while exporting billions in unreported gains. Now, African leaders are openly calling this out for what it is: theft disguised as partnership. What makes this resistance even more powerful is that it is Pan-African in nature. The bold steps taken by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are being watched in some cases mirrored by other African countries facing similar struggles. The message is spreading fast. Africa no longer has to accept scraps in exchange for its treasures. Nations are beginning to collaborate, share intelligence, renegotiate trade terms, and align their laws to create a unified front against exploitation. This coordinated resistance is grounded in history. It is a response to centuries of colonization, decades of puppet leadership, and years of false development promises that never materialized. This resistance is also generational. A younger wave of African leadership, represented by figures like Traoré, Goïta, and Chiani, are not burdened by the Cold War alliances or colonial guilt that shaped earlier post-independence leaders. They are driven by the hunger for self-determination, influenced by global activism, and emboldened by technology that allows for real-time exposure of exploitation. These leaders are not content with symbolic independence. They want full control of land, policy, currency, and trade. They understand that true liberation cannot be achieved while their people remain poor and their resources enrich others. Neocolonial exploitation has been especially evident in strategic sectors such as mining and energy. Uranium from Niger has fueled European nuclear plants, while Nigerians lack basic electricity. Cobalt from Congo powers global tech, yet Congolese miners live and die in unsafe conditions. Gold extracted from West Africa has padded the reserves of central banks abroad, while African schools remain underfunded. The pattern is clear. Africa supplies the raw materials, and someone else captures the wealth. The Sahel's revolt against. This cycle is exposing these injustices in a way that can no longer be ignored. This movement is not without its risks. Countries that challenge the global order face economic retaliation, political sabotage, and intense media scrutiny. Leaders are vilified, regimes are destabilized, and sanctions are threatened. Yet despite these pressures, the resistance is holding strong. The courage shown by Sahel leaders is inspiring a new generation of Africans to question the systems they've inherited and to envision alternatives rooted in equity and justice. The narrative is shifting. No longer are these actions framed solely as nationalist or populist stunts. They are increasingly recognized as legitimate expressions of sovereignty. African intellectuals, civil society groups, and grassroots movements are rallying behind these changes. They understand that reclaiming resource control is a prerequisite for solving deeper systemic problems: poverty, corruption, education, and healthcare. Wealth that remains in Africa can be reinvested into Africa, rather than depending on conditional loans and exploitative aid. African nations are beginning to build economic models based on fairness, regional collaboration, and long-term vision. This broader resistance is also influencing the continent's geopolitical alliances. As African countries push back against Western-dominated structures, they are exploring new partnerships with emerging powers that offer more favorable terms. While this brings its own challenges, it also provides leverage that African nations have lacked for decades. The idea is no longer to simply switch one master for another, but to establish relationships based on respect and reciprocity. Africa is no longer asking to be included, it is demanding its seat at the table. The fight against neo-colonial resource theft is not only about minerals and money, it is about identity, justice, and the right of African people to control their own destiny. The Sahel nations, with their unwavering stance, have ignited a flame across the continent. A flame that tells every farmer, miner, student, and worker that their land is not for sale. Their future will not be dictated by foreign interests. Their wealth will no longer be looted in silence. This is a new era of resistance, and it is unmistakably African. If you're tired of the media hiding the truth, and you're ready to take control of what really matters, hit that subscribe button now. Your support helps us keep digging deeper, exposing the facts, and delivering the stories they don't want you to hear. Thank you for standing with us. Every like, every share, and every comment pushes this mission forward. Stay informed, stay powerful.